Learning more about the gunman killed at the Canadian Parliament building yesterday in Ottawa. This morning, members of the Canadian Parliament stood and held a moment of silence. CBS 2's Sonia Rincon joins us live with more. Sonia.
Authorities say the gunman was a Canadian convert to Islam who may have been self-radicalized and had a history of drug abuse. Canada's Parliament is back open today, and that moment of silence was observed this morning. At least 30 shots were heard inside Canada's Parliament Hill building yesterday.
Guys, there is a shooter on the loose.
Canadian authorities identify the gunman as 32-year-old Michael Zahaf Bibeau. He was dressed in black with a scarf over his face. They say he was a Canadian citizen who recently converted to Islam, but he was born Michael Joseph Hall in Quebec, and neighbors say he came from a good family.
The boy seemed to have had a very good upbringing.
But U.S. officials say his passport was revoked by the Canadian government because he'd been in contact with people in Syria. They're not ruling out the possibility that he may have been inspired by ISIS and may have had plans to join fighters there.
Counterterrorism officials are very worried that this movement, the Islamic State, is really motivating others not only to come to fight in places like Iraq and Syria, but echoing the calls from al-Qaeda to attack in place.
I am now more worried about a terrorist threat in the United States than I have been for a long, long time.
Former CIA Deputy Director Michael Morell tells CBS this morning there's concern about self-radicalized attackers here in the U.S., and ISIS isn't the only terrorist group trying to reach them.
We still have al-Qaeda in Pakistan, al-Qaeda in Yemen, and the Khorasan group planning attacks. And we have the fact that what Edward Snowden did has made it much more difficult for law enforcement and intelligence to track these guys. So we are at, I think, a very dangerous time here.
Police say they have every indication Bibeau was acting alone.
We're satisfied at this point that one individual was responsible for the shooting yesterday on the Hill.
Bibeau was shot and killed by Sergeant-at-Arms Kevin Vickers. The gunman's only victim was a soldier, Corporal Nathan Cirillo, shot in the back while guarding a war memorial.
Corporal Cirillo was murdered in cold blood. Canada will never be intimidated.
This morning, the Prime Minister laid a wreath at the memorial. Canada's terror threat level remains at medium. It had been raised earlier this week because of another incident in which a Canadian soldier was killed. Live in the newsroom, Sonia Rincon, CBS 2 News.
A local law enforcement has stepped up security in our area following the shootings in Canada. The NYPD has deployed what it calls the Hercules team. Their very visible, heavily armed special services unit. Armed officers now guard locations associated with the Canadian government. They've been stationed outside of the Canadian mission on the east side and at the consulate office on 6th Avenue. Police Commissioner Bratton says NYPD officers are working in Canada as well.
We routinely have, as part of our overseas detectives offices up in Canada, we have supplemented that by sending another officer up to that area. So we are staying very intimate with that matter as it goes forward.
Meanwhile, at the federal level, security has been increased at the U.S.-Canadian border.